Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Clojure team Birds of a Feather or BoF session. I will be your host today, Elana Hashman, effective lead of the Clojure team, sometimes known as the Queen of Debian Clojure. Hopefully we'll have more folks joining us. I see that we have Rob Browning, we have Zigo, we might have some other people joining us. I'm going to check the Etherpad because I don't really have an agenda for today. I know that we've made some progress on some core packaging tools with our GSoC student. But other than that, it's just kind of what have you. It's been a long week, and I am at 2 conferences this week, so it has been very hectic. Rob, what do you want to get out of the BoF?
I don't know. I'll have to think about it. I don't know that I have anything right off the top of my head, but I am very happy to see the progress on getting the DebCLJ stuff packaged, although that is not me at the moment.
Yeah, and I know that our GSoC student did not finish the packaging. If I have in my copious spare time some time to pick it up, I might go and do that. There's been some back and forth on the mailing list in terms of like how we might phase in the new Clojure CLI tools. So for folks who are sort of not familiar with the whole sphere, or maybe you're just watching this and you don't know anything about Clojure, Clojure is a Lisp that runs on the JVM. So all Clojure code compiles down to Java bytecode and then can run. And so we in Debian, we've had like this RL wrap sort of bash wrappery script called user bin Clojure for, I don't know, basically since Clojure has been packaged for Debian, like over 10 years. And in the past few years, upstream Clojure has introduced some new build and command line tools and entry points, in particular a tool called Tools Deps Alpha, which is, I don't know, everything in Clojure is alpha forever, which is used for dependency management and management of what are called EDN files. And we also have seen like new entry points. So a Cloj CLJ entry point as a command line script. And then there's also a new Clojure script, which Cloj now wraps. So there's been some discussion in terms of, well, like, we have this thing that already points to user bin Clojure or is installed as user bin Clojure. That's already managed with alternatives because, which version of Clojure is it going to point to? Is it 1.8? Is it 1.9? Is it 1.10? Who knows? So, there's a question of, well, this new thing, when we introduce that, what should we do with it? Should it replace the existing Clojure script? I would be fine with replacing the existing Clojure script, but I think that we would have to have at least a couple of releases with deprecation before we do that. We also probably want to use alternatives to manage this new incoming script. I have suggested that we don't want it to be the default because there is no reason for it to be the default. There's more on the Debian Clojure mailing list that folks can read up on there. But that's probably a reasonable summary in terms of where that's at. Now, we have a GSoC student who has been working on packaging a bunch of these things, but I don't think that they are finished. Certainly, we don't have like a Clojure CLI package that's ready for sponsor and upload at this point, which maybe is a good time to introduce Utkarsh, who just joined. Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's good.
But I'll just introduce myself. I'm Utkarsh, and I've been a DD for the past 3 years, but I recently joined Clojure team to initially help with the Puppet server, and then I just stuck around. I do some bits, like not as much as Elana, of course, but I just try to help with a few bugs here and there and make time for anything that I can. And yeah, that's about it.
I think you've overstated how much work I've been doing recently, which is, let's say, less than I would like. I know that there is apparently at least 1 or 2 packages, I think, that are not Java policy compliant, because I think I'm only installing the jars in like the Maven repo and not in user share Java. So oops, my bad. Haven't got a chance to fix those yet, but
Yeah.
so do you have any opinions in terms of what we should chat about? We have a Etherpad. There's no there's a question which is what's the Jitsi link?
Awesome. Is it by Leandro? I'm just pasting.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I just pasted it in Debian Clojure anyway. So
Cool.
he can come here and talk about the project that he's been working on, like the status update for everybody.
And it looks like Paul is running a few minutes late, which is fine. I guess, should I give an update in terms of like where we're at in terms of what we released in Bullseye? Because I mean, it's not very exciting. I think we released with like Clojure 1.10.2 and not quite the latest patch release of Lineagen, but there was a whole dep reorganization that I did not have the time to do for a patch version. I was also like told to not take. There were some like relatively critical bugs that happened in between. I think we might be on like 2.9.2 or something like that, and then there were a couple of patch releases that both had relatively critical bugs. Phil Hagelberg, the maintainer of Lineagen, was like, "Don't take those. Wait until we fix them." And so I think we might be on 2.9.5 now. I have not yet packaged that, so that did not ship in Bullseye. Probably in the next release. And I don't think there have been any other major Clojure updates in Bullseye. So I think we have Leandro now. Do you want to introduce yourself? You're muted.
Yeah, I think I'm not muted anymore. Thank you very much, Lana. Hi, I'm Leandro. I'm the GSoC intern who was working during these weeks in the Clojure CLI packages. I'm very happy to meet you all in person. I already had a chance to talk once with Utkarsh, but not with the rest. Yeah, as Elana said, there is still some work to be done to finish the CLI packaging, which I intend to continue. And that's something I think we should definitely discuss. I don't know what else to say really. So thank you very much.
Looks like we have another new joiner. Are you ready to introduce yourself?
He likes to create suspense before he introduces.
Yeah, there's some big suspense. I mean, also mute, so maybe he's talking to us and we just can't tell. So let's see, what else do we have going on? What's going on in Puppet Land as like Zigo just turns off his video?
We are still at the point where we have a problem with JRuby and we need help with the Java part. I'd be very much happy if anyone doing some Java packaging could kind of mentor me, and then I would be able to do it. But like the way it is right now, I don't think I can do much without help.
Yeah, so the TLDR is that we have Ruby 2.5, then we had 2.7 in the archive, 2.5 is in Buster, 2.7 is in Bullseye, and now we're going to be uploading 3.0, and 2.5 was 2.6, 2.7, 3, so 3 years back, 2.5 was released, and JRuby uses 2.5, and it cannot, like, so if you have anything above 2.5, it'll fail to work, JRuby. So it's like it uses old Ruby with weird Java stuff. So there's like lots of stuff that you need to figure out if you want to work on JRuby. And that is the blocker for Puppet Server, really. And we're yet to find a way to have that sorted. One way that I suggested was to embed the entire interpreter, the Ruby interpreter into JRuby to get that working. But even then, it has lots of build failures, weird build failures, like Maven build and like not even simple Maven build stuff, but like complicated ones. So there's that. There's where we're at in terms of JRuby and therefore Puppet server.
The good thing is that we were done with the Clojure part. All the Clojure modules were packaged.
Awesome. And hopefully they won't move too much because things don't actually move that much in Clojure land. I mean, maybe the Puppet dependencies will. Paulo, do you have your working AV yet? Looks like no. What else do we want to talk about? We have 45 minutes. We are in 11 minutes, which is not very many.
One thing I thought about the other day, because I had started using it elsewhere, I don't know if this would be appropriate for us, but I had begun in some other projects using line NBD to scan for CVE, for CVEs basically. You just run it and the problem is it has to download some giant database if you use it in CI or whatever, but it looks for any CVEs in any of the dependency tree, anywhere in the dependency tree of the given project. That might or might not be as appropriate for us, but I wondered.
We're continuing to work through AV issues. We have another person asking about the Jitsi link in the Etherpad. I don't know them, so maybe you want to, if this person could perhaps introduce themselves on IRC, or there is a talks channel for this particular session as well as other sessions. It is #DC21-talks-1 on OFTC. So people are also welcome to discuss there in addition to the Etherpad, and we will be looking at that. Currently, no discussion in that channel or in the Debian Clojure channel, but it's been an interesting year, I think. I've noticed that DebConf feels pretty low key. We are shipping a release. Feels a little bit slower paced than an average year. And I don't know about the rest of you. I've certainly had less time than average to dedicate to Debian, and the time that I have been spending in Debian has mostly been technical committee stuff. So
I would entirely blame it on the pandemic and the release being happening. So freeze and pandemic. So yeah.
Yeah. Do we have any, I forget what it's Bookworm is the next release, right? Do we have any goals that we want to have for Bookworm?
That's exactly what my question is going to be. Do you intend to work on the blockers that we had, like for a couple of packages, including Clojure as well, like the newest version of Clojure?
Well, we have 2 years probably before we are, need to have stuff done. So I think odds are good that we will have time to actually get the stuff packaged. But there's a question of newer version of Clojure. I think there might be a new patch release out, but there's no 1.11 is not out as far as I'm aware. So
yeah, I think just .3 is where one minor point behind.
Yeah, I think 1.10.3 came out in the middle of freeze, so I didn't bother touching it. I'll probably bump the version. Now that we're out of freeze, I can do that. I think there's a few other things that I need to do because I also have to fix the missing jars.
I mean, clearly, if, at least for me, I'd think, and it seems likely anyway, that if we could have the CLJ deps, tools depth stuff in for the next release, that seems likely, and that would be really good.
Yeah, that seems likely. I think that's a reasonable goal, and I would certainly support trying to get that done.
I suppose once we have both that and Linigan, of course, we've had available for a good while. Thank you, Elana. That might make it easier for us to start thinking about other forms of automation too. I don't have any idea what they should look like, but you know, Deb helper-ish helper, I don't know, something that might make it easier to maintain some of this stuff with fewer people.
We also have newer version of Linigan that is 2.9.6 available, and we are at 2.9.1. So there were blockers, right?
Newer version of what?
Linigan.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, so that was what I was talking about earlier, where like they released a few new patch releases, and I asked Phil, like, you know, should I take these? And he's like, no, don't take them. They have bugs. Wait for like, you know, the next version or whatever. So one of the things why I didn't bother bumping the patch versions quite yet is it was going to require a little bit of finagling, in particular, like bumping to the latest version of data XML. Because like right now, if I was to upload that dependency, it would immediately break Linigan. It does not compile with it. Like even if, you know, it was using the Debian version or whatever, there's like incompatible interfaces, which is why I've been kind of like holding off on ensuring that we put that one in there, because I don't want to deal with like, you know, broken Linigan for like the next, you know, now is a good time to do it. But if we were like close to freeze or whatever, nobody wants to like go and like, you know, upload a revert version. So.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's a good book or goal that we can have, like do a newer, fresher release for Linigan whenever that's available.
Yeah. Let me take some notes in the Etherpad. Y'all can feel free to speak while I am taking notes. I'm just trying to summarize what we've discussed thus far.
Then I would like to add a little thing. Well, how little it is. Anyway, something. I think that after the takeover of Cognitech by Nubank, I think we could expect more building tools to be released by the core Clojure team. I think that was the case for tools builds. Well, at least that's what I think. I could be wrong, of course. So I think that that would be convenient in a way that in the sense that considering that, as Elana said, there are still 2 years for the next freeze. That might mean that the upcoming stable release could include new tools. Some of them have already been released, and some of them probably we don't know about.
Oh, yet another question that I had was like, how independent are the Clojure libraries that we have packaged? I mean, for example, there are a couple of, I mean, not a couple, there are like many packages, Clojure packages, which can be updated to a newer version, but I'm afraid that might result in something breaking or the other. Like even if I think some of them don't even have auto PKG tests, so like there's no way to actually test that if they would work with their reverse or reversible dependencies. So how I'd say, would it make sense to update those packages to their newer version, just to have like newer libraries, newer versions of those libraries? Or
I've never seen any reason to do that. Like, given that, so my general goal for Debian packaging is I don't think that Debian should ever try to be like a replacement for Maven Central, right? Like the stuff that we include in Debian should be like specifically in service of trying to have specific applications in Debian, as opposed to like library support. Now, I know like different teams take different approaches to this, and certainly like what makes sense for like core libc libraries is not necessarily going to make sense for core Clojure libraries. But like as far as Clojure things go, like the vast majority of people, they're going to apt install Lineagen, and then they're going to immediately start using Maven Central. They're not going to necessarily be pointing their local install at the local Maven repo. Now, there are, I'm sure, people who do this. That would be a great thing to do if you're trying to develop like Debian only like applications. But like fundamentally, I would not say that's my priority use case in terms of like Clojure team packaging goals. I don't think we have nearly enough resources for that. And so for the most part, I have just been sticking with like the libraries in Debian are specifically in service of certain applications. So like in service of for example, like packaging Lineagen, packaging Clojure, packaging like other Clojure-based apps like Puppet. And beyond that, I don't think there's any reason to include Clojure libraries in Debian. They are effectively just copies of source code. We don't actually precompile. This comes up every Clojure BoF. We don't precompile Clojure libraries because of bytecode incompatibility issues. It would be very, very complex to try to do this, and it's not supported in upstream Clojure anyways, so we don't do it. So effectively, all we're doing is shipping like a copy of source code when somebody installs a library anyways. And for the applications, those are pre-built. And so then users can, it's effectively like ahead of time compilation, but then you don't end up with copies of all of those libraries on your system. It's just the apps. Because there are so few of them, there's not a lot of overlap. So this is like a reasonable tack to take for these things. But so anyways, so there are like some libraries that like I think are independent of the applications. Like one off the top of my head is Java JDBC. But generally, like I would say I personally am not in the business of trying to like make Debian match Maven Central. I don't think it's going to work.
Yeah,
Well,
that's fair enough.
And depending if you were, I wasn't sure, it sounded like maybe you were also talking about whether we should upgrade versions like to newer versions that are upstream if they're still basically compatible. And I think I'd say, I'd be tempted, maybe this lines up with what Elana is saying, to be a little conservative and only, change those things when we need to, because only if everybody upstream were across the board were following strict semantic versioning with no exceptions, then maybe we'd be okay and we could be pretty confident that bumping a Z release would be fine. But not everybody does. And, when we're changing the versions from what were in the upstream projects, which we do pretty regularly, and those are the ones that were tested and are generally used upstream, there's always risk there. And so I'd say every time we bump those things, there's potentially some risk. So.
Yeah, and we don't have like, it would be very cool if, Debian had CI that was this sophisticated, but right now, like there's no way, for example, as far as I'm aware, such that like if I take data XML as an example and I bump the version of that, there's no way for me to also like take that, find all of its reverse build dependencies, like build those things with that version and then run the CI and then see if it fails or not. I think it would fail if we had like based on my previous experience, like with the current version of Lineagen, if we uploaded like the latest version of data XML, that would fail. But like there's no easy way to do that right now in Debian, either like on a remote CI system or locally. So
we do use this. Could probably somebody paste this on GitHub as well. So there is this meta build script, which is an equivalent to sbuild, but it will also check all the reverse dependencies. If there are no auto-PG tests, it will do the build instead of like just running the test. So this is what we use in the Ruby team extensively to make sure that even a patch update, like as Rob said, not everybody uses or respects Semver, semantic versioning. So even for a patch update and specifically for major updates, what we do is we run this build script, and this automatically takes in all the reverse dependencies and all the reverse build dependencies as well, and runs those tests against that and see if anything breaks. And then we follow up like open bugs or fix those as well. So yeah.
So this is Ruby team specific?
Oh no, this is just shell, and this would work for everything. I use it for everything.
I see. I think I've never heard of this. It sounds kind of specific to the Ruby team where they can use it for other packages, but nobody else knows about it. So maybe it should be moved to like the Debian namespace as opposed to Ruby team, and some effort should be made in publicizing it, like just kind of spitballing.
Yeah, I thought there was. I've seen this done in Debian and other places before when you were saying that, Elana, but I wasn't sure where, and maybe it was the Ruby team, but I'm also wondering if there's somebody else who's been like doing reverse dependency rebuilding. I don't know.
There is something called as RAT, R-A-T-T. If you can check this, this is all the package. Rebuild all the things. That is what it stands for, and a lot of people use RAT as well. So this is officially in Debian. One can use that as well.
More than one way to do it.
Is there a way to automate that as a Salsa pipeline?
Yeah, there was, but then this needs CI team and admins. So CI team admins and people like that. So also CI admins, I guess, they have to be, we need to slip them some beers to get this done, but otherwise I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, we have like a number of people who at least have admin access now on like the Clojure team repo. It's not just me, so you're not just blocked on me. Oh, hey, I think that's Alex.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hi, Alex. Welcome.
You're muted, Alex.
Mute, I guess. Yeah.
Hello.
Long time no see.
Yes.
So as far as the magical reverse dependency / build dependency pipelines and whatnot, like, yeah, I don't think I'm a blocker to that. My concern, I guess, is that like, is that I've mentioned that I'm a little resource constrained to work on Clojure team things. Like, is that a good use of our time? So like, there's an infinite number of things we could be doing with Clojure packages. And I try to prioritize in terms of like, what is actively going to like impact directly downstream users of like a Debian OS or an Ubuntu OS or something like that. Because like I could go and like, add lintian tags, or I could go and like clean up some of the packages which don't have the right standards version right now, or like all those other things. None of those are user facing, so I haven't bothered doing them. And so I think like something like this potentially could be useful if we were trying to bump versions of things all the time. But if the team policy is, well, there's no point in doing that because the upstream libraries don't use those versions, and we're packaging libraries sort of in service of the upstream applications, there's no need to bump them and try to like make more work for ourselves by introducing incompatibilities accidentally. Like, I would say, if we had an infinite amount of time, then like, yeah, sounds cool, let's do that. And it's awesome to like hear about some of these tools today. But I would caution us from like, I mean, the tech is very cool, but like, I don't think that somebody who's running like a stock Debian system is going to actually see any positive impact from doing that. So as far as like my time goes, I would much rather focus on like, let's get new tools up to date in Debian. Let's make sure that end users can use those tools. And that they're having a good experience on a Debian-based system. And then like, if we have all of that, I think like in an ideal state, then I would say, yeah, let's go and like try messing around with some of that stuff.
Is now that I think about it, is part of one of the reasons you might be saying that also is because, I mean, I agree in general if it weren't easy, but even if it is easy, it might not matter because as much as this, right? Because all the libraries we have are primarily in service of applications, and all the applications that we have are shipped as, do they pick up all the jars on the class path, or do we ship them as effectively an Uber jar? Like a packaged application for...
Lining gets shipped as an AOT compiled Uber jar.
And is that just, because if that's our general policy, then bumping one of those dependencies and then somebody upgrades and picks up the bumped one somehow won't break the existing line again because it's got all of its dependencies.
Yeah, it doesn't even have a dependency on those things, like a runtime dep. They're all just build deps. So if it gets bumped, like in the archive, then the new version of Lineagen that will get sent out will be rebuilt with that thing. And then that might bubble down to people's systems. But like, yeah, if they have a library on the system, Lineagen doesn't care. It's the same with like Clojure itself.
So as long as that remains true, that's our policy, that they're just build deps. I mean, if we stick to that, then we would catch, in theory, if the test suites are good, any incompatibilities when we bump a build dependency the next time we try to build that application, and we could address it then. Although,
yeah, my worry is that there's sometimes really long. Oh, sorry about that. My worry is that there's long lag time sometimes between when we detect those things. So like we upload a new version, it might be 2 months before somebody like discovers that, oh, by the way, this doesn't actually build with this thing because why would we rebuild it?
I was not remotely suggesting. I still lean in favor of being conservative on that front. I meant in cases where we actually need to bump the dependency for a given app. That's the point at which it might be useful to try everything else and make sure we didn't cause any collateral damage. So.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. While we have Alex here, I think one thing that we should talk about that we haven't discussed thus far is reproducible builds in Bookworm. Because as far as I can tell, Clojure fundamentally does not build reproducibly right now. And so like there's nothing that like, we can go and run all of the scripts or whatever. The bytecode is still non-reproducible. So like we had some performance regression issues, so we just like turned it off. But like even when we had some of the reproducibility scripts sort of intervening, it was still non-reproducible. So I was kind of like, it's an upstream Clojure thing. I don't know how to fix it. I don't have time to fix it. So.
Yeah, I know there was the one problem was in compiling the performance thing, if I remember right, was compiling source to classes, and then the timestamps were Clojure will pick up whichever has the newer timestamp, and they were either the same timestamps or something like that. It was picking up the Clojure files, source files, instead of the compiled class files, if I remember right.
Yeah, so we had an issue with that, and I think that somebody patched the scripts that messed with that to solve that perf thing. So that got fixed, but nonetheless, even with that fix, that it wasn't causing like a performance degradation, the Java bytecode was still non-reproducible. My guess when looking at it was it had something to do with the like seeds used for lambdas, like generating those like anonymous function numbers in the identifiers, and also like the order of the Java bytecode would change. So like I did not spend any significant amount of time digging into it beyond like acknowledging that it was not a trivial thing to fix.
Yeah, macros, GenSim symbols, and those are just pulling out of a counter or whatever. So it's easy for those to be different. And I haven't really spent any time looking at the cases where it becomes different, but it definitely does. So I definitely see that as well. And having more control over that might be useful. We have talked about this a little bit in the core team, but not really prioritized it. Most people don't ever notice or care about any of that stuff, but it is useful, important sometimes for tooling type stuff where you'd really want to be able to control either have it be reproducible and I'm not sure why it would be sort of non-deterministic. Everything should be getting loaded in this and compiled in the same order every time you do the build. So if that's not true, then I'm not sure why, but that would be interesting to find out. And then if there is an ordering difference, then you could end up with GenSim numbering differences as well.
Yeah, I think that was like the thing that I saw a lot of, and it might be something as simple as like there's just some random seed somewhere that, you know, gets initialized to something different every time we run. And if we could just set that every time, then we wouldn't see the reproducibility issues. But
I think we started with 1, so I don't think it's random. But
is it compiling in parallel? Could there be a race to get the counter values?
I mean, it's possible, but actually, like the way compilation happens, it should all be single threaded in the actual Clojure build itself.
And is the ordering deterministic, you were saying? So, or should be in theory, you were saying, you think?
It should be. I mean, it's possible that, like, you know, some things get put into something that's hash indexed or something like that. But even that should be reproducible on the same JDK. So,
was it easy to trigger, Elana?
Yeah, so I was going to say, how do people feel about me ensuring that we take out in all of the various Clojure packages that we have right now, anything turning off, like our scripts that are supposed to promote reproducibility, ensure that those are all turned on, reproduce the not reproducibility, and then go from there. Because then we can file bugs and say, look, this package isn't reproducible. I don't know how severe they're going to be for Bookworm. I watched the Reproducible Builds talk because I was like, oh, they're coming for us eventually. So I wanted to see kind of where they were at. And there's still some core tools in Debian, in particular, like I think GCC is still not fully reproducible. So like there's some core tools that are preventing us from being a fully reproducible OS at this point in time. But you know, eventually I think it's going to be a requirement, so we may as well get ahead of it. And that's definitely an action that I can take upon myself, is to ensure that Clojure and Leiningen aren't at least suppressing the stuff that we're doing to try to make Java stuff reproducible.
I think what's going to happen is that regression will be RCs. Like something that was reproducible before cannot become non-reproducible anymore. And the other thing, like, have you gone to look at the defoscope output? It should give you a rough idea of what's going on.
Yes, that is what I'm basing this discussion off of, talking about like it's not trivial to fix the reproducibility issues, because we were looking at the diffoscope output and we were like, you know, if this is easy, let's just fix it. But it was not easy. So that's why we've kind of just left it.
I was wondering if one thing might try, I mean, I could even try it, is if we just create a little trivial Hello World project and see if that triggers the problem. If it does, then that might be something much easier to show Alex or whoever.
Yeah, well, so one of the issues is that Clojure itself, like when I build that is not reproducible. So like, that's one of the things we need to fix. We can definitely do the Hello World thing too, but.
I don't mind receiving a report on Clojure itself. So I know that's messy, but I understand the mess. So but that's the actual problem you have too. So
my feeling is when we fix it in Clojure, it should fix it in all of the downstream things too.
Yeah.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, it's something about the Clojure compiler itself. It's not specific to the Clojure jar, but and I'm pretty sure that you actually provided me with good information at some point in the past, which I no longer have access to. And I'm looking through bug reports to see if I filed one, but I don't know that I did, unfortunately. But I would be happy to do so if re-provided with that information.
Yeah, I assumed it was a compiler. I just thought it might be easy to see in a small example. If it showed up, obviously it was, oh, look, these symbols are getting.
Yeah, you guys don't have to do that work. I can do the work. But
let me unmute myself. Am I unmuted? Everything is covering everything else. Yes. Here is my DDPO, which is almost equivalent to the Clojure teams. We have a couple of bugs filed against Clojure, but I think at least one of them is like a wish list for the Clojure CLI scripts. And I think one of the bugs filed against Lineagen is for this. And this one's new. I haven't seen that one. Please make the build reproducible. And so there was a bit of a discussion here where I was like, yeah, look at this bug. This is you disabled the running of strict non-determinism, but that was not why it was non-reproducible. When we had it on, it still didn't work. So, and of course, I'm sure that this link is way outdated because Clojure 1.8 was RM'd, like it's no longer in the archive. Yeah, and I don't know. Oh, there was this one, which is kind of sitting open for a while about the perf degradation, which we can probably close.
That was real. That was
yes.
a job bug, actually.
And I guess, what do we have? Yeah, we have Clojure 1.10.2 in Debian right now. We don't have 1.3 yet, but that will be coming. I can do that.
Well, I would say 1.10.1 is highly preferable to 1.10.2. So we considered 1.10.2 to be a bad release, basically.
Alas, I guess that's the one that's in all of stable testing and unstable right now, which I guess is, we just released a new stable, so that's not shocking. But yeah, in old stable we had 1.10.0, which apparently had the perf issue. So I will get 1.10.3 uploaded soon, and then that should hopefully close out that bug.
Yeah, the thing that is in that is we made a change in a macro to emit a call to a new function, which means that if you compile something with 1.10.2 and then run it with a different version, an older version, then it won't work. And a newer version now, because we've undone that in 1.10.3. So, so.
Well, and we can potentially do. We could potentially do a stable release upload of 1.10.3 if it's a critical perf thing. But I think we've got to get that into testing first. I haven't tried to do a backport or a stable release upload.
Yeah, it's really about compatibility with compiled Clojure at runtime.
Are the dependencies, the build dependencies, are they the same in 1.10.3 and 1.10.2? Because that'll make it much easier.
A good question. We actually discovered that the spec libs were being compiled with a Java 1.5 instead of Java 1.8, and I recompiled those in either 1.10.2 or 1.10.3, but I don't remember now which one. I can tell you.
Or could we cherry pick that fix if we had to, if there was too much other stuff for the stable release?
Almost the only thing in 1.10.3 is just that undoing that one bug fix. There's that one, there's that, and one other patch. So it looks like I made the dependency changes in 1.10.2. So 1.10.3 is almost the same as 1.10.2. Same dependencies. It undoes that one change and adds one additional fix, which was pretty minor.
Great.
And the thing that I popped open here, sorry for the, will it show me? I don't know why it always goes to the suite, but it defaults to like stretch, which is ancient. Yeah, I don't want, like, why is it looking at 1.8.0 for unstable? That doesn't make any sense to me. But for the latest versions, I can see that they're non-reproducible. And when we look at them, there's like bytecode changes, so. I don't know why it keeps going to like the whole suite when I just want to see this one package summary. It just does not want to tell me. So, alas. Anyways, no issue. I will stop sharing my screen. We have 1 minute left. Is there anything else we want to cover today?
There was a question earlier about future with Nubank and Cognitect or whatever, but I didn't actually catch the question.
Yeah, sorry, I missed the question too.
I don't remember who it was. So, if you wanted to re-ask it.
Which question?
There was something earlier where somebody mentioned Nubank and Cognitect in the future, but I didn't actually catch the question.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. It was me. Well, I thought, at least that's my hypothesis, that given that now you're part of a bigger company, maybe you have more time to dedicate yourself to developing new tools, or it's just my hunch.
I mean, that less time. But we will continue to be developing tools, yes. Sure.
Oh, and I missed this. Apparently there was somebody from the translations team who wanted to join the call, but I think we're at time, so.
Oh no, I had already sent the link.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess we're at time, right? I should stop talking.
We're at time. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It was great to see everybody's faces.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
For sure. Right.